come. And then I'll open it up to any questions that anyone here has. What is the difference between self-esteem and ego? This has been asked by Parag Shah from the website. Self-esteem is a really good thing. Self-esteem is that which fuels us with an awareness of who we are, an awareness of our worthiness. Self-esteem is not on its highest and best level. It's not about, oh yeah, look, I'm so pretty, everybody should really like me. Or, yeah, I'm the best tennis player or cricket player or football player, therefore I am worthy. But self-esteem at its core is rooted in a deep awareness that who I am, even with my skills, my abilities, some things I'm good at, some things I'm not, some things I'm strong in, some things I'm not. But even with all of the human variation, that the very nature of who I am is worthy. That the very nature of who I am is enough. That I'm not a beggar for anybody's appreciation. I'm not a beggar for anybody's friendship. I don't have to subsume myself in order to make you like me. Right? Self-esteem is that enables us to move through the world, holding our head high, fulfilling our dharma, living according to our principles, our ethics, our values, our beliefs. It gives us the courage and the strength to walk our own path, even when it's different from the path that other people may be walking. Because self-esteem says, it's okay. You don't have to do what everybody else is doing. Your way of thinking is also great. Your way of thinking is also worthy. Yeah, it's different, but equal, just as good, just as valuable, just different. When we don't have self-esteem, then we don't have that courage because we feel like, oh my God, nobody's going to like me. What if I do this and I fail? Or, I'm not really smart enough to do it, and probably people won't like me, and probably I'm going to make a big mess, and then I'll be really embarrassed. And so lack of self-esteem handicaps us on every level. Mentally, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. Says you're not pure enough, you're not good enough, you'll never get there. And it also handicaps us just in our day-to-day life. It prevents us from making choices and decisions, walking paths that are true to us. So self-esteem is something that we most definitely should have and cultivate. And it arises out of self-awareness and self-love. Self-esteem is not something that you can just buy. It can only be there in its fullest, most powerful way when you really have first the awareness of who you are, who am I even? And then as I become aware of that, I love it. I love my soul, my spirit, that I'm one with all. I love the divine love of God that flows through my heart as a channel of that. And yeah, I even love my struggles and challenges and issues because they make me who I am as a unique being. I mean, we're all soul. We're all spirit. We're all divine. We're all consciousness. And that which makes us unique are we're all neurotic in our own little way. We're all troubled in our own little way. We all have our own things that, we struggle with. And as long as you don't let them convince you that you are unworthy, not good enough, not pure enough, or that you are somehow the struggles, you can actually look at them and enjoy them as little quirks. It's like when you love someone else and they've got little quirks, little idiosyncrasies. You can just look at them and sort of smile and, appreciate it. Oh, yeah, he's just like that. Yeah, she's like that. And you start to be able to do that with yourself. Oh, yeah, I'll get over it, don't worry. You start to just take the self very lovingly, but take the psyche and the story very lightly. That's self-esteem. It's what makes us know I'm not my psyche, I'm not my complexes, I'm not my neuroses, I'm not my challenges. Ego is that which keeps us locked in a box. Ego defines us. Ego says, I am this. Don't you know who I am, is the ego. And it keeps us stuck. Ego says, oh, I could never do that because I am this. Self-esteem is expansive because it's rooted in self. And as I said, it's predicated upon self-awareness, self-love. These are all expansive practices. Who I identify as keeps expanding. Ego does the opposite. Ego keeps making it contract. This is who you are, this size, this weight, this color, this skill, this ability, this bank account, this job, this struggle. Self-esteem is rooted in an awareness of the self that's far beyond the ego. I don't know anybody who's got self-esteem because they've got such a good ego. Oh, my ego's great. I'm really, proud of it. It doesn't arise from that. It arises from an expansiveness. Ego just sticks you in a box. So cultivate self-esteem. And as you do, one of the aspects you'll notice that you start to just look at and not be too troubled by is the ego. When we speak about issues or complexes or neuroses, well, those are all aspects of ego. When we speak about the psyche, it's an aspect of ego. And so you notice it. And you notice the ego and you sort of, oh yeah, there's my ego. And you notice it, you exhale, you let it go, you giggle a bit that there it is again. But you don't identify as it. And the less you identify as ego, the more you're able to cultivate real self-esteem. Ego keeps us very small. Even when, people become very arrogant, it's actually based on a very small ego. The show of arrogance is a defense mechanism against how small they feel inside. People who really feel wonderful, great, they're the least arrogant people in the world. People moving through the world with arrogance are compensating for a lack that they feel inside. So ego keeps you small. But work with the self expands you, because who you are is expansive. The self in its nature is expansive. But good question, because there's frequently a lot of confusion about that. So thank you for that by Prayag. Yeah, other questions? Any question that anyone here has? Yes, you can just, you in the front row, the woman in the front row, you can just come up to the microphone.
Namaste. I wanted to ask something. I have several questions, but today I'm going to ask
That's
one.
okay. We'll start with one.
Yes.
Yeah.
How you managed to forgive the abuser because you had this amazing experience. If you don't have this experience, what's the way?
Great question. Okay. So she said, I managed to forgive my abuser because I had this great, powerful experience. She's referring to my personal story that I shared in my memoir, Hollywood to the Himalayas. And yeah, I had this incredibly powerful spiritual experience. But the forgiveness was not actually part of that. The forgiveness came later. And all the powerful spiritual experience did, it didn't make me forgive. I don't think it made it any easier. All it did was it gave me the faith and the commitment to sincerity to just try. When Pujya Swamiji said to me, you have to let it go. Go stand in Ganga and let it go. Forgive him. I thought, there's no way. I spent hours that day. It's horribly embarrassing and makes me feel ridiculous and awful 28 years later, but I spent hours that day kind of mocking the idea. I was a Western academic and a psychology PhD student, and you don't give your problems to a river in the world that I come from. It's not that simple or simplistic as I had thought it was. So in my mind, there was no way that I was actually going to be able to be free. Certainly not tonight. Yes, maybe over many, many, many years of intense therapy that I was in and doing and work, but not quickly, not soon, and most definitely not tonight, and certainly not because I just gave it to a river. The experience of being one with the divine that I had had about 7 or 10 days earlier before this was an experience that made me aware of, palpably aware of, the inseparability of myself from the divine. It gave me courage within myself. It gave me an awareness that who I was not lacking and not good enough and problematic and in need of a lot of work and, all of the things that I had thought about myself on a core level. It didn't make me think I was any further along with my psychological work. It just gave me a different base. Instead of the base being who you are at the core is wrong, isn't good enough, is somehow tainted in some very fundamental way, is dirty, is sinful in some fundamental way. It gave me a base of knowing who you are is actually divine. You are none of those things. You are divine. You are one with the divine because you've just experienced it. And you continue to experience it. But one of the really deep but important truths of spiritual awakening is it does not sadly cure us of psychological complexes or neuroses. And this is a topic that a lot of really beautiful teachers from the West particularly have spoken about. This idea that, you have a deep spiritual experience, you feel that oneness with the divine, and yet you go back into the office, you go back to your parents' house, you have to navigate a relationship, and you have no way to do that. Yeah, you can access God in a moment. But navigating a relationship with colleagues, employees, employers, your parents, I think it's Jack Kornfield, I think it's him, who said, if you ever want to see how enlightened you really are, just go spend 2 weeks with your parents. Just go back, move into your home of origin. And it's going to show you how much more work you have to do. And I mentioned this because specifically related to me, I had this very deep spiritual experience. I certainly had no felt sense of any emotional or psychological distress. I was in ecstasy. I had tears of joy. It was still, on some level, going to have to be dealt with. I didn't have any illusion or delusion that somehow this beautiful spiritual experience had rendered me free from all of my work of the psyche. Fast forward 7-10 days, and I ask Pujya Swamiji about fear. That's why he told me this. It's not like he just looked at me and said, you have to let it go. I asked him about fear. And he said, you fear because you don't trust. And I explained to him why I don't trust. Here was my story. And that's when he told me to let it go. And what I can offer you on that level is it requires two things. Two things that I'm now aware of. One is faith. Faith in some conception of the divine. Now, you don't have to have had a powerful spiritual experience. You just have to have a deep belief that there is an intelligence, a benevolence in the universe. If you don't have a relationship with God, just the intelligence in the universe. If you do have a relationship with God, even better, by any religion, any way, it doesn't matter. It can be through a specific religion. It can just be a connection to the universe when you look at the stars in the sky. Or the way that you feel watching a sunrise or a sunset. That connection to a power and a perfection in the universe, because when we let go, we're dropping into what feels like a void. For a lot of us, our pain is our identity. I moved through the world for 25 years like this is who I am. The good stuff I did was like, look at what I've been able to achieve even after having had these things happen to me. Aren't you proud of me? Aren't I a good girl? And the complexes and the neuroses and the issues. It was, well, because of course, my God, I mean, I had been abused, I had been abandoned, I had this. It was my way of knowing myself. It was my way of understanding and explaining every aspect of who I was. And it was my way of, on a deep level, sharing myself with others. Here's who I am. I've been abused. Here are the ramifications in my life of the abuse. So when you let go, when you forgive, you're dropping into what feels like a void. Oh my God, who will I be if I don't identify as that? If I don't move through the world identified as the one who was abused, abandoned, betrayed, cheated, whatever your story may be, if I don't identify as that, then who am I? And what's going to hold me together? If this narrative, if this story, if this anger, if this pain, if this depression, if this addiction is the glue that holds me together, and I break free, who will I be? And that is a drop into the void, which is why faith is so important. Because it's really hard. It's not impossible, but it's really hard to drop into that void without the awareness that you're being caught. That there is someone, something that is going to catch you, sustain you, hold you. So that's the first part. The other part, and that was what the spiritual experience, by the way, gave me, was that awareness that whatever happened, I was being held. The other part is something that I've come to realize only years later. And I think that if you haven't had the spiritual experience, this is going to be the most powerful piece for you, is the awareness that you deserve to be free. That is your birthright. On a spiritual level, the scriptures that are written, the teachings that are given by the gurus, by the sages, by the saints, I have never seen one that says, by the way, this only pertains to you if. I've never seen it. You are soul, unless you're person A, B, C, or D. I've never seen that. Your true nature is divine unless you are this person, or unless you've done that, or unless this has happened to you. Never said. The teachings are for all. So your birthright, the very nature of who you are, is freedom. And the story that you hang on to is that blocks you from freedom. And only by letting go of the story can you step into your birthright. Can you step into the freedom? And that awareness, I think, is the other critical piece. Because we don't forgive because we feel like somehow we need to hold on to it, that the universe somehow needs us to hold on in order for them to get their karmic dues, or that somehow we need to hold on. You don't. And by holding on, you actually go from being victim to being perpetrator. I realized that which was done to me as a victim, but it was done decades earlier. I was the one doing it now, because I was the one bringing that into the present moment. I was the one who got up every day and said, hey, remember you were abused. I was the one who all the time said, I can't trust, here's why. I went from being victim to being perpetrator. And the pain that I was in was not pain from that which had happened to me 20 years earlier. But it was pain from the way I was telling and retelling the story every day in my mind. And carrying it from one day to the next day. And so you realize you are the one carrying it. The mind is carrying it. The body has changed. If Pujya Swamiji had said to me, show me the part of you that was abused, I couldn't have done it. There wasn't one cell on my body at the age of 25 when I met him that actually had been abused. Not one. Every single cell of my body had changed by then. Several times over. The she who had been abused no longer existed. Doesn't mean it was right, doesn't mean it was okay, doesn't mean that it wasn't awful. Doesn't mean that he shouldn't get his karmic due, which he did. But it means it's not me. It's not me. But in order to be, in order to be free, I need to let go of the story and let go of the anger and the pain. So you do it because you deserve to be free. And once you realize that, you start to want nothing more than to be able to forgive. Then it starts to become just like, get it off me. That first forgiving I did without having this awareness. But as the years have gone by, it's not that no one has not ever done anything that hurt me. No one's done anything quite as bad as that. But people do things, people say things, the world is the world, people are people, and we get hurt. And as the years have gone by, what I've realized is whenever something happens that hurts me inside, my initial instinct is to just figure out immediately how to get rid of it. Wash it from me. Because you don't want it to stick. You realize this thing, this thought, this emotional reaction is what is blocking me from being in peace in this moment. It's what's blocking me from being free in this moment. I can be angry or I can be free. I can be the injured party or I can be free. I can be the one with a good story of what happened to me today because those people. Or I can be free. And that's up to me. And as the years have gone by, I find that I literally cannot let it go quickly enough. Because the last thing you want is it to actually stain. So take that, and you're here on the banks of Ganga. Ganga's the place. Just let it go and forgive. Again, not because what he or she did is forgivable, not because they deserve to be absolved from it, not because you want them to do it again, but simply because you deserve to be free. So you let go. Beautiful. I mean, could you imagine going to an oncologist and having the oncologist say, you've got this tumor in you, and I can operate and remove it fully? It's not going to be easy. It's going to be a little, some discomfort for a while. Or I can leave the tumor in and it can keep growing and eventually kill you. Could you imagine saying, nah, don't do the operation. Leave it in. I don't want to go through the discomfort of a surgery. I mean, could you imagine? We would all say, yeah, now. Like, how quickly can I get an appointment? Get it out. Why in the world would you want something growing and festering inside you. Especially if the operation is, a guaranteed success, no side effects. Bit of temporary discomfort, sure, but no side effects. No possibility of failure. You'd say, get it out immediately. And our anger, our pain, our holding on to the stories is that. It grows in us. And the tragic thing is that we do it over little things. I mean, you and I are talking about severe abuse. But the truth is, if you look at actually what a lot of us hold on to, it's nothing. It's a tiny little itsy-bitsy microscopic grain of sand that we have swallowed and allowed to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow into a tumor that's suffocating us and killing us. Did you hear what she said about me? Really? Like that's worth your peace? That's worth your freedom? Did you see the way he looked at me? Really? Our freedom is that cheap? We're going to let it go that easily? And then we hold on to it. Oh yeah, I don't talk to him anymore. 10 years ago, he said this thing and it was really yucky. But I'm still angry 10 years later. No, I won't go to that wedding that he's going to be at. Think, my God, 10 years of your life. This tumor's been growing in you. One obnoxious thing somebody said. One selfish thing they did. So yeah, think of it really like that. And the good thing is you don't even need a doctor. Requires just you letting it go. Good. Yeah. Other questions? Yeah.
Thank you. First of all, I prostrate at your feet and I feel overwhelmed at this moment. It is a dream come true for me. I hail from Bihar, but I belong to all of you. Yes. Yeah. One question has been nagging me since my childhood. And frankly speaking, I have been oscillating between faith and doubt. I can't say for sure whether I am a theist or an atheist. But when I think of the cosmic intelligence, yeah, I feel that it is great to belong to this divinity. And one question that is nagging me is related to karma.
Okay.
Why do the virtuous suffer in spite of their holistic doings, virtuous doings, and the vicious flourish? Why it is so? If God is really presiding over this universe, how come that when Jesus was being crucified, when Socrates was being poisoned, why did God not intervene? He could have intervened. But this question keeps me back from, total faith. But
Beautiful.
yeah.
Beautiful. So your question assumes that the ultimate highest purpose of life is to live as long and pain-free as we can. Right? Stay here. Stay here. Yeah, stay. Your question, no, it's okay, whatever. The question assumes if God existed, he would have intervened when his beloveds, the incarnations of the divine, or the sons of the divine, or however we conceive of the divine embodiments on earth, when they were being tortured, killed, harmed, why did God not intervene? That assumes that the highest purpose, the highest goal of life, is to live as long as you can pain-free. Right?
Of course.
Right? I mean, that's the assumption that your question is based on. That if God exists and is good, then God would have intervened because this thing goes against the highest goal, which is live long and live pain-free. They're being killed at a young age. It's a painful death. Therefore, there must be no God. And yet, if you look at all of the incarnations of the divine I know of, in all of the different religions, and I'm definitely not a scholar of comparative religions, but if you look at Jesus Christ, and you look at Krishna, and you look at Ram, and you look at even so many different divine beings, prophets, sages, avatars, incarnations, one thing is true about all of them: pain and suffering. Right? I mean, why did God not come and save Jesus Christ? Well, I would answer your question with a question, and I would say, well, when God came on earth in the form of Krishna, why be born in a jail? Right? I mean, why in the first few years of his life have his life threatened so many times? Why not be born in a mansion? Silver spoon in your mouth, coddled and loved. Why? When God came in as Ram, thousands of years prior to Jesus Christ, why not get coronated on that day? Why be exiled and spend 14 years in the forest? Why? I mean, if he's God, he can write whatever script he wants. But what we see over and over again is that when the divine incarnates on earth, we are shown stories of struggle, of pain. And I believe that this is to actually teach us that longevity, comfort, luxury, ease, these are not actually the highest goals of life. Otherwise, the most enlightened beings would live those lives. But they don't. In almost all of the stories, I can't think of a story of an incarnation of the divine or an enlightened master or a sage who lived like that. How you read the life story and it was, born in a perfect family, silver spoon in his mouth, died at the age of, 120, never having had any difficulties, and just, I don't know a story like that. They're all stories of great struggle, great pain, much worse than what any of us ever has to go through. And I think it is exactly to teach us, don't hold those as your highest goals. Don't assume that that's the carrot that you're doing your sadhana for. The highest goal is freedom. And you think, if Jesus Christ had had a different story, If Bhagwan Ram, if Bhagwan Krishna had had a different story, we would have entirely different kathas. We would have entirely different scriptures. The Bible would be different. The Ramayana would be different. The Srimad Bhagavatam would be different. It would all be different. Which would mean we would not get the lessons and the teachings that we are meant to get from their lives. I believe that they chose these incarnations to give us those teachings and those lessons. So your argument only works if an easy, comfortable, long life is the highest goal. But when we realize that the highest goal of life is the experience of the truth, of the divine, the highest goal of life being to use this human body as an instrument in surrendered service, well, then they all lived lives that were absolutely perfect to give us exactly the message that we needed. And by the way, if he didn't die on the cross, he wouldn't be able to rise again, and then we wouldn't have a miracle. Right? It all weaves together. It weaves together into exactly the stories that we need to be given for us all to know how to take the next steps on our path.
Again, ego comes into play here.
Of course.
Had I been in place of God, I would have created a world, with such an order that nobody would have suffered. That is my ego, perhaps. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, we all would, I assume. I mean, I've certainly played the if I was in charge of the world game. And again, what all of that presupposes is that the highest goal, the highest aim is to be comfortable, well-fed, pain-free, and happy, based not on your spiritual practices, but based on the situation in the world around you. And what our spiritual teachings teach us is that is not the highest goal. The highest goal is to find that within yourself. But I agree with you. If I were in charge, there's a lot I would change. And I guess that's why we're not in charge.
Okay.
Right? I mean, what I know is that if you could step back far enough to have a view of the entire tapestry, it would all make sense. But it doesn't make sense when you only have a bit of the tapestry. And what any of us is able to have is just a bit of the tapestry. We're not able to see the full picture. Right? Why did Bhagwan Ram have to go off into exile? Well, you got to go back to Shravan Kumar. If you don't go back to Shravan Kumar, none of it makes sense. But if we don't bring that thread into the story, then of course it makes no sense. It's awful. Why should that be allowed to happen? So I think we have to be able to go far enough back to see the full tapestry.
Actually, it has so happened that instead of accepting, okay, I am not able to explain it. Actually, our most of the scriptural, script writers or writers of scriptures, they have made the confusion a little confounded. Confounded in the sense that they say, when Dhritarashtra put this question, why this suffering? Why I am suffering in such a way? In this life I have not committed. Okay, I have committed some mistakes. Okay, but why this suffering? then he was shown, okay, that you have hundreds of birth,
Yes,
behind.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. In retrospect, you punctured the eyes of a parrot.
Yes.
And
That's why you're blind, of
yeah.
course, yes.
So they
That's
mean,
what I mean by stepping back far enough to see the tapestry.
so they mean to say that it is the effect of our karma. We are reaping the fruits of our past karma.
Yes.
But again, the question arises. Okay, they say that in doing your karma, in performing your karma, okay, you are at your free will. Then the question again arises, if it is my free will, okay, then what is the role of God? I do not mean to deride God. I do not know. I have profound reverence for all the saints and sages. But then what is the relevance? Why did God, okay, did not prevent Dhritarashtra from puncturing the eyes of the parrot?
To begin with.
In that, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
it's a great question. We'll take it up tomorrow because it's a much longer question than we have time for right now. We'll start with it tomorrow. But I would leave you with just one question to meditate upon in the meantime. You say, well, if the reason he's suffering today is based on what he did lifetimes ago,
Yeah.
and if God is kind, why did God not prevent him from doing that lifetimes ago so that he wouldn't suffer today? I would leave you with a different question. Why did God create all of this, the entire Leela, to begin with? And the reason that that's the critical question is that all of this, the law of karma, reincarnation, rebirth, all of that we go through is part of the entire Leela of creation. So if you're going to question every step of the way, you might as well go back to the beginning and say, what's the whole point to begin with?
Of course.
Right? So think about that, meditate on that, and we'll take this up tomorrow. The question, in a nutshell, for those of you who didn't get the full story, is if everything we are doing is based on our free will, so if we have free will to act, and if our circumstances and that which is happening is based on our past actions, so we've used free will to act, now we are getting the repercussions of those actions. If that's the case, what's the role of God? Right? That's
Yeah.
your question, Hannah?
Yeah.
Great. A beautiful place to start tomorrow.
Okay.
Because I want to be able to really take it and not just give you a one-line answer. Let's dive deep. It's a great question.
Thank you. It is a great experience
listening to you.
It is already a kind of epiphany. It is happening to me.
Wonderful.
Thank you, and thank you,
Wonderful.
all of you.
That is the whole point. It should just happen. Great. Have a beautiful rest of your evenings. I hope that you will all also really take advantage of all of the beautiful offerings that we have during the day here. Whether you're staying here at Parmarth or not, you're more than welcome to join us for a full day of beautiful programs. We have yoga classes, meditation classes, a beautiful morning fire ceremony, of course our Ganga Aarti in the evening that I hope you all come here directly after. And all of it is open to everyone. There's no charge for anything. So feel free to please take advantage of throughout the day all of the different beautiful offerings and expand your experience. There's a a schedule of all of the timings and venues and whatnot up in our reception office. So have a look, and I look so forward to being together with you tomorrow night. And I hope that in the meantime you'll also take advantage of some of the other beautiful programs that we have.